Hello to Professor and everyone watching our presentation. This is our group Spicy Behaviorist. We are going to talk about extrasensory perception. Myself, Hitali Swaminarayan, along with my group Sumneet, Karan, Abhinav, Arman, and Sarah. Hope you guys enjoyed this presentation and learn more about extrasensory perception. Perception is our brain's way of making sense of world by interpreting sensory inputs. What we can see, what we can hear, touch, taste, or smell. But sometimes people report experiences that don't rely on the five senses. And this is what we call extrasensory perception or ESP. So this includes phenomena like telepathy, where one claims to read someone's thoughts without even communication. Clairvoyance, or knowing about the distinct or unseen events. Precognition, which is knowledge of future, and psychognosis, the ability of influencing physical objects with the mind. So, when I'm talking about famous and influential people, I would begin by talking about Joseph Bank Ryan, often called the father of modern parapsychology. He began his work in 1930 at Duke University. He created the now famous Zener card experiment to test the clairvoyance and telepathy. So he conducted over 90,000 trials, and Ryan used statistical analysis to identify results that seemed to go beyond chance. His work led to publication of a book in 1934 and created a journal called Parapsychology. However, many scientists criticize his method, and they also argued that ESP was not scientifically reliable. So, decades later, now I would like to talk about Daryl Beam. So, a psychological professor at Cornell received and revived his interest in ESP with a series of experiments between 2000 and 2008. He tested over thousands of students to see if they could predict random events like where an image would appear on a screen. His 2012 publication received national attention too, as some participants scored better than chance. However, other researchers struggled to replicate his findings, with raised serious questions about reliability of his results.
Moving towards the main ideas and assumptions of ESP. So one of the major assumption is that ESP is considered as the sixth sense, which means people can receive information without relying on their five senses, which are hearing, seeing, touch, taste, and smell. They can receive information without any kind of physical touch, and this is a hidden ability of every person. So the reason it considered as the sixth sense. So the things it include are called telepathy, which means that reading someone's mind, and predicting future events known as pre-recognition. The another idea of ESP is that it is the mind beyond brains, which means mind and brain are two different things, and instead of brain creating a thoughts, some people also believe that it just received from outside, kind of the radio picking up invisible signals. This also no said to be that this would mean that mind could work even without the brain, which is the big challenge to the modern neuroscience to predict such kind of things. Another idea of ESP believes that ESP is present in everyone, but we don't know how to access it. Some of the supporters of ESP also believe that it can be unlocked through meditation and focus techniques. And we can also have a lot of industries around us which help us to develop this psychic powers, and like some of the industries offering courses and books to activate this hidden skill. Some people also consider ESP as the consciousness as energy. So they refers that the quantum physics and says that consciousness might work like a energy, such as influencing things at distance and across time. They talk about the concept like entanglement and non-locality, where particles are connected even if they are far apart. So there, but this sounds scientific, but there are not solid proofs which links ESP and real quantum effects. There are various type of ESP such as so like pre-recognition and clairvoyance are, so these are based on the idea that mind can go beyond the normal limitations. For example, if you can go for know the future or sense something happening far away, your mind is not tied down by space or time like your body. So this is something different from what we experience on a daily basis. If this ability can be unlocked, so people can know their future events without just putting pressure on their mind. If and also like the telepathy, which means that reading someone's mind. So person can just know what the person in front of him or her just thinking. So it will be quite helpful for everyone if this ability will be unlocked.
Similar to any other theories, the proponents of extrasensory perceptions were trying to figure out if ESP truly exists or not. To do so, they were trying to design experiments to eliminate any regular physical sensory perceptions such as hearing, seeing, or any physical sensations from the experiments, and to make sure that they are able to prove that this extrasensory perception exists. To do so, they were designing different experiments. Here we are just like looking at a few primitive experiments that they've done, and one of them is the Zener cards, and then the other one is Ganzfeld experiment that we will review in the next slides. The first experiments that we are talking about here is called Zener cards. It was designed in 1934, and it was for the purpose of testing telepathy and as well as clairvoyance. So what happened was that we had 25 different cards and we had 5 different shapes in this deck. And what happened was that we had like star, we had square, wavy shape, and we have a plus sign. And then the experiment was designed in a way that we had a sender and we had a receiver. So the sender was trying to think about, or just like trying to choose one of those shapes and trying to transfer like their decisions or their imagination through telepathy to another person who was a receiver. And then they were trying to figure out if the results is statistically significant when they were trying to guess what the sender is thinking about. But the whole point of this experiment was that the receiver had the 20% chance of reporting what was chosen by the sender. The second experiment is called Ganzfeld experiment, and in this experiment they were trying to eliminate all the sensory perceptions by limiting the receiver in the room with red light and with white noise plus half ping pong balls on their eyes. So they were trying to eliminate all these sensory perceptions, and then the receiver was trying to guess what the sender's thinking about. So the sender was shown an image or thinking about an image or a video, and then they were trying to send it through telepathy to the receiver.
So let's talk about RNGs, which stands for random number generator. So to begin this experiment, you need a device or a software that rapidly produces random numbers like flipping coins but electronically. So first record baseline results with no attempted mental influence, then have participant focus only on their mind, try to push the RNG towards producing more of the target outcome, for example more ones and more zeros. Then multiple runs are done for accuracy and all the data are statically analyzed to see if the result deviate from pure chances. Well, care is taken to ensure that the person influencing the RNGs cannot interact with the device physically but only mentally. So this method was bought by a scientist named Professor Robert, who is the founder of Princeton Engineering Lab, which is also called Peer Lab, and which is operated at Princeton University from 1979 to 2007. Well, after all these experiments, this brings us to the Peer Laboratory at Princeton. For almost 3 decades, the Peer team ran many experiments asking volunteers to influence the RNG with their minds. But what did they find? Occasionally, the numbers slightly deviated from the pure chance when someone was focusing. But here's the science get tough. Like all the tiny statistical blips, proof of ESP or just a coincidence. Well, does repeating the experiment always give the same results? In fact, most mainstream scientists argue that these effects are so small and inconsistent that they do not support any ESP or a scientific reality. But Pierce's work kept the question alive. Like, could there be a non-physical way the mind interacts with the world? So now let's move gear to the field investigations. Well, instead of labs, these experiments more happen in the places like paranormal phenomena reported, things like haunted houses, ghost sightings, and more locations like where strange things happen. Well, researchers bring tools like EMF readers, where to detect unusual electromagnetic fields, and audio and video recorders, sometimes even infrared cameras. Well, these experiments often look more like ghost hunting than experiments, but some paralogists do try to use objective methods and data.
Hi, my name is Arman and I'll be talking about the criticism of extrasensory perception or ESP. This means things like reading minds, seeing the future, or moving objects with your mind. A lot of people believe in ESP, and there are even experiments that try to test it, but in psychology, we need strong evidence to believe something is real. So, in this part of the project, I'll talk about why many scientists don't accept ESP as real science. One major issue with ESP is that many experiments are not done properly. For example, some studies only use a few people, which makes it hard to know if the results are real or just luck. In other cases, the setup allows cheating or guessing based on clues. Some experiments didn't use double blind testing, which means the experimenter might accidentally give away hints. Also, when other scientists tried to repeat these studies, they could not get the same results. In science, if something is true, it should work every time, but with ESP, that doesn't happen. Another problem is how our brain works. We often think something is ESP, but it's just a mind trick. For example, we remember when we had a weird feeling and something bad happened and say, I knew that would happen. But we forget all the other times we had a weird feeling and nothing happened. This is called hindsight bias. Also, when random things happen, our brains try to find patterns or meaning, even if it's just chance. So many ESP stories might feel real, but they are just coincidences or normal thinking errors. Science also struggles to explain how ESP would even work. We know how our five senses work. We see with our eyes, hear with our ears, and so on. But there's no brain part that can read minds or see the future. Some people say quantum physics might explain ESP, but they don't give clear proof. These ideas are usually very vague and not supported by real scientific evidence, so right now there's no physical or biological reason to believe ESP is possible. To end, I think ESP is a very interesting idea. It's fun to imagine having superpowers or secret senses. A lot of people have personal stories about ESP, like dreams that came true or feelings that something was wrong. But stories aren't enough. For science, we need clear, repeatable evidence. Right now, ESP doesn't have that. So while it's cool to think about, we should be careful and think critically. Until there's better proof, ESP should be seen more as a belief than a real scientific fact.
Hey, my name is Karan Rawal, and now we will talk about the conclusion of extrasensory perception, which includes concepts like telepathy, clairvoyance, and precognition. There is no doubt these ideas are essentially fascinating. They have a part of human imagination and pop culture for years, but when it comes to science, fascination alone enough is not enough. Where we need solid proof, but unfortunately, that is where ESP falls short. Researchers like J.V. Ryan and others did attempts to expose ESP scientifically. These studies sparked a lot of interest at the time. However, as pointed out by Alok in 1981, many of these experiments lack strongly scientific control. Even more importantly, the results they proved were rarely repeatable by other scientists. That is a major issue because repeatability is a key requirement in science to prove something is real or reliable. Even today, after decides of research attempts, most ESP-related findings fail to hold up under the scientific testing. Some studies may show small effects, but these often disappear when testing under some scarcity conditions. So, based on the evidence or lack of it, our group is concluding that ESP is more than a belief than a science. Its existence is it is mysterious and it definitely sparks very less, but without stronger and reliable proof, it remains unproven in the eyes of science. Yeah. So that's all. Thank you so much.